that was an introduction, but I just want to focus on one point. You might have heard the Minister or seen the announcement by the Minister this morning regarding the budget. The full budget for the scheme for this window has not yet been announced. There's a full review of budget across the Welsh Government at the moment. The budget for this scheme is tied up within that full review. So at the moment, we're opening the scheme. We've got the payment rates and all the details being announced today. But the budget will be confirmed or be known prior to the contracts being issued later this year. So the aims of the scheme are threefold. One is to protect habitat land previously under management. So that's habitat land currently in a Glastir contract up to the introduction of SFS. To introduce additional land into manage, so land that's not currently under paid management prior to the start of SFS. And the third key aim is to maintain support for common land. So some key points. This scheme is available to all eligible farmers. So it's not just farmers within Glastir, it is available to all. And that was the key issue and the key reason that Glastir has come to an end as the EU funds expired. This scheme is funded through...
Sorry to interrupt, Richard. We're having a few questions coming up on the Q&A saying that they can't hear through the translation. The presentation is now in English, so you don't need to press the interpretation tab. You should be able to hear Richard anyway. I hope that's working for you now. Sorry, Richard.
Yeah, that's all. I'll just quickly recap of those key aims then. So one, to protect land under habitat land, which is in current Glastir contracts up to SFS, to bring additional land into paid management, and to maintain support for common land. So those are the three aims. Some key points then. It is available to all farmers, so it's not just those within a Glastir contract. As Glastir come to an end, and which was EU funded, this scheme is funded by domestic funds, so it needs to be available. It's a clean slate for all farmers to be able to apply. The application window will open 29th of September, which is this Friday, with contract to start 1st of January 2024. The contracts will be for 12 months, and this application will be farmer-led, so there's no contract managers or farm visits. The application will be through RPW online, and a payment will be a payment per hectare. So eligibility, you need to be registered with RPW online. These are quite standard eligibility criteria for schemes. Primary producer of agricultural products, or you have 3 hectares of agricultural land, or you're able to show that you've got 550 standard labour hours. In terms of eligible land, so this is the land that is eligible that you can apply on. These fall into 3 categories. So the first category is habitat land currently within a Glastir Advanced contract. So these are not all Glastir Advanced option, but those habitat options. So those are the first category that's eligible. The second category is land that we've identified as habitat through existing habitat layers or maps. These are currently published maps on data, which are available to view on Data Map Wales. So these are existing maps that we are using, and we are pre-identifying these for you. So these are the second classification of habitat land. And finally, the third is land which can be managed as habitat. So this would be permanent grassland that farmers might wish to apply for into the scheme, and they would manage this as habitat. So this would be probably permanent grassland of low productivity, which is not receiving a lot of fertilizer, if at all. It's not being farmed intensively, but if it is, and could reach the management requirements for the scheme. We'll go into a bit more detail on these later. So to be eligible as well, you must have management control for the 12-month period from 1st of January to the 31st of December 2024. I just want to make one point on designated sites or SSSIs. If these are supported through an existing GLASTIR contract, they will be pulled through into the habitat scheme. However, if the designated site is not currently part of a GLASTIR contract, these will not be eligible. For those within GLASTIR, there is a management plan and consent approved by NRW for that site. So we can maintain the management based on that existing consent. For new, for land or designated sites not within GLASTIR, we do not have the time or capacity to be able to develop management plans and obtain consent for those sites by the 1st of January. So for this 12-month period, the scheme will not, any designated sites not currently within GLASTIR will not be eligible for this scheme. So I'm just going to go into a bit more detail on those three land classifications. So land within GLASTIR, these eligible field parcels will be pre-identified for you at application stage. Of the land that we identify, all those field parcels will have to be included in the contract. There is no opportunity to pull some parcels from management if they've previously been supported in the GLASTIR. Under these eligible options, they have to be maintained under that option and as habitat into the contract. For those within GLASTIR as well, any additional land would also be pre-identified. So this additional land would be any habitat land that we identify. Now this might, in usual normal circumstances, there wouldn't be any additional land for any existing GLASTIR contract holder unless they've bought more land or have management control over land, be it a tenancy or rented in. But if they have done that, this land will be pre-identified on the application form. Then for a existing GLASTIR contract holder, they have the option of bringing land into the agreement under the third category, which was to manage as habitat. And this could be in two circumstances. One, where existing land with the existing GLASTIR option has not been pulled through. Now, these would be some of the ones that are not classed as habitat in our scheme. And secondly, is GLASTIR contract holders can also bring additional land which is not currently under the management agreement of GLASTIR. So again, it falls back into those three categories. So for farmers not in GLASTIR, the habitat land on their farm will again be pre-identified and presented to you in the application form. Again, all that land has to be included in the contract. There's no option to deselect land if it's habitat land and still under your control. These areas could be whole field parcels or could be part of the field. And there will be circumstances where one or more habitat or different habitats could be within the same field parcel. Again, as for the GLASTIR contract holders, where a habitat land is identified as part of the field, you have an option to bring the remaining eligible land into the contract under the third category. So the third category, this just summarizes what I've just already said. If it's not under areas 1 and 2, you can bring land in under the third option. However, whole fields have to be introduced, and for those fields submitted, no changes to field boundaries can be made. For land submitted under this third category, they have to meet the minimum criteria. I know, apologies that the font for this is quite small, but it is you need to confirm that it's permanent grassland, has not been ploughed or reseeded or improved in the last 10 years, has a range of various grasses and not predominantly ryegrass, has little or no input of fertilizer, both inorganic and farmyard manure, of low productivity, and has a different range of plants, which is typical of the soil type. Now, this will be for the farmer to submit and agree to this or make a subjective view of what that land is. So the important thing is to consider how productive that land is and to bring in land that actually do meet these criteria. All the land that we've identified, be it through GLASTIR options being pulled through or from land that we've identified as habitat land, they will be placed into these 10 broad habitat classifications. So all the land under the option 3, land managers habitat, will fall into option 10 there, land managers habitat, and all the other habitat will fall into those 9 categories. One of those categories, category 7, includes trees and woodland habitats. Now, for that category, the only woodland that will come into that category is either existing woodland within a GLASTIR management option or woodland identified as ancient woodland through one of our existing maps. So to be clear, it's not all farm woodland. It's specifically woodland under current management or woodland that's been identified as ancient woodlands through the ancient woodland layer that's being published. So for those 10 habitat classifications, there will be requirements for each one of them. Now, these will be broadly similar to look at, with a list of management requirements, a list of do nots, and some management recommendations. For instance, grazing to a varied height, do not plough, do apply fertilizer, and so on. So there is quite a bit of commonality between the management classifications, but there are subtle differences depending on the specific habitat. So against those habitats, there will be 3 payment rates. So one payment rate for habitat land, and that will include 9 of those classifications. One for the woodland habitat classification, and a payment rate for common land. So the payment rates are £69 per hectare for the habitat land, £62 per hectare for the woodland habitat option, and £25 a hectare for common land. On the common land as well, there will be additional payments for stock management, mixed grazing, and stock reductions in the same way as there were for a GLASTIR Commons contract. And those payments will say more or less the same as in the GLASTIR contract. On the payments as well, there will be no capital works involved in the scheme. For capital works, you'll have to apply through the small grants environment. So anybody within a current GLASTIR contract, for any windows that open in 2024, you'll be eligible to apply for the small grants environment. The maximum payment to individual applicants will be capped or tapered. So, and the tapering will work on the first 200 hectares of eligible land. So this is eligible habitat land, not farm size. So the first 200 hectares will be 100% of the payment rate. The next 200 hectares up to 400 hectares will be paid on 50% of the payment rate, and everything over 400 hectares of eligible land will be paid at 10% of the payment rate. The capping does not apply to common land because of the way that payment is distributed. So the application process, I'm not going to go into much detail on this because it'll be part of the presentation. So like I mentioned, all the information on existing habitats will be presented to you via RPW Online. The areas will be identified. If you do not have management control or retain management control over the areas that we presented to you, you'll be required to remove those areas, and you'll be able to add land or field parcels under the category 3 on your online application form. When you submit the application, a selection process will apply, and we will select the highest scoring applicants first, with areas delivering the greatest environmental benefit being selected first. And then we will offer contracts up to the value of the budget that we've got. The scheme details will be published on that website, but we'll leave the questions, we'll answer the questions after we go through the application process. I'm thinking it might all come together as a scheme when you see the process. So over to Joe and Jane then. Diolch.
Diolch yn fawr, Richard, am hwnna. Thank you very much. We'll, the questions are coming in thick and fast, actually, but we'll go over to Jane and Joanne first of all. Croeso i chi'ch dwy.
Diolch yn fawr. Noswaith dda. We'll run through the form very quickly, both for the individual businesses plus the Commons application. We've tried to keep the form as simple as possible. We'll show the map and the application process, and I'll hand over to Joe to go through the form. You're still on mute, Joe.
Apologies. I'm going to go through the Habitat Wales expression of interest application form. This will be accessed through your RPW Online account. You can access the form through your homepage or through the Forms tab, as you usually do for any other applications. Then you can go in and start the application, which is our generic screens, and then we need to go into the introduction. This is our standard setup of a form through RPW Online. So there's your introduction page, and which will give you information about the scheme. And then there's, oh, sorry, I've skipped ahead, apologies. There's also a link here to the guidance document on the Welsh Government website, and there's also there should be a link here for your how to complete instructions. Okay. This will take you through to your privacy notice. It's the standard privacy notice again for all of our applications. And then we come to the eligibility section. There's 3 eligibility questions here. There's the, does your business have at least 3 hectares of eligible registered agricultural land in Wales? These are all mandatory. The second one is, can your business demonstrate over 550 standard labour hours per annum? And then the final question is your business a primary producer of agricultural products? You must select yes to either the 3 hectares or the 550 standard hours, and a yes to primary producer. RPW will then, once you've submitted your application, we will carry out our usual checks. Then we come to the, we're back with the eligibility space. Apologies. There will be, if you select no to all of 3 questions, it will come up with some error messages here saying that your business must have at least 3 hectares of eligible registered agricultural land in Wales, or demonstrate at least 550 hours of standard labour costs per annum. And then there's also, your business must be a primary producer of agricultural products. If you don't answer any of the questions, it will show that this is a mandatory question that needs to be answered. So now we go on to the selected parcels tab. This is where parcels are pre-populated on this application. These are those where it has been identified that you've got full management control from the 1st of January 2024. These are also registered with RPW. I just want to mention about tenancies. If you have a farm business tenancy, an AHA, unwritten tenancy of 364 days, it will be classed as having management control, but you must have management control for 12 months, i.e. the 1st of January to the 31st of December 2024. This is the length of the 12-month contract. If you don't have management control for the full 12 months, then you need to either and you don't believe that you will get a recurring tenancy, then you need to go in and deselect parcels from this application, or sort out your tenancy for the period. Okay. Listed below here with all these, in the table below with the sheet reference, field number, etc. It will list all of the field parcels that have been identified as being in one or more of the following categories. I believe in the previous presentation it was touched on, but I just want to reiterate again what we are pre-populating on your application. The first category will be land currently under a habitat option within a Glass Tier Advanced 2023 contract. The second category will be habitat land not currently under management in 2023, but has been identified by published maps on Datamap Wales, excluding designated sites. So these will appear in the selected parcels list with the total habitat area pre-populated and a pre-ticked for habitat area included here. The third category then will be land managed as habitat. This is a potential to become habitat land following management. These areas will show as potential permanent grass area to be treated as habitat, these areas here. And you can choose whether or not to include potential permanent grass area within your application or not. Okay. Right. Alongside your list of field parcels, there are a couple of icons here. If you go into View Map, you click into there, it will show you your habitat area, etc. that's been pre-populated on the on the field parcel on your application. So this is one where we've got habitat here, but I just want to just go through the two different tables up here. These will come up with your with the map. You've got sheet reference, field number, field size, the tenure status as well of the field parcel. And in here, this table here, we have got habitat areas. So on this particular view, we've got three habitat areas, two as the 9 options then, and then we've got the land managed as habitat then. These areas in pink are the habitat areas that have been populated. Okay. You can view in and out using this here, the scale. Let me just go on to the next slide because I've got a further view of the field parcel in under consideration. So if you see here, we can also put on view options on the field parcels. You've got aerial photography, you can take that off, put permanent features on as well. But you can see the two areas here of habitat. These have got icons next to them, so you can, bear with me one moment, you will be able to view the habitat areas. You will also be able to view permanent features as well. This is on the second tab here. So on this particular one, we've got bracken scattered, which is around here. These permanent feature areas are included in the areas that you can include in the scheme in your application. Sorry, the man-made permanent features are going to be deducted, though they will be deducted. Okay. Go on to the next screen. I just wanted to show you a little bit more about the permanent features here. So on this particular one, we've got a few permanent features here, and they've been circled here in this field parcel. Okay. I also wanted to show as well this particular habitat area here. In this table here, it will also show if it's been under, well, if it's under Glastonbury Advance 2023 contract. This will be the map ID here. It will be the management option that this particular field parcel was under. Okay. Also just wanted to show as well this particular field parcel. This only occurs, these dots, it's just the way that the data is being mapped. It doesn't mean that you're going to lose out on these little bits of area here. It just comes up spatially as circles. It's because there is a number of small areas of habitat within a larger area, and this is the way in which it comes up on screen. So I don't want you thinking that there's something wrong with the map or your computer. Okay. Right. This section now is going to be about including permanent grassland to treat as habitat into your application. So here we have 3 field parcels on this particular table here. So we've got the first one, we've got no habitat area to include, but we have got 0.1 hectares of potential permanent grass area to be treated as habitat. So you can go in and select that. I will show you that in a moment. And it's the same with this one. This one has got habitat, so this area here and this area here could potentially come into the be submitted on your application. So on this slide, I have selected the field parcel with the modify button, and this will come up with the details then of the field parcel with your sheet reference, field number, field name if it's been provided previously. There's also a question here to tick. This tick box I will come on to in a future slide. The parcel eligible tick box, that will be included. You can't change that. The field parcel size in this particular instance is 0.71. You've got your habitat options here and the areas against those options. So your total habitat area on this particular field parcel is 0.19, and habitat area included, that tick box is not amendable either. And then you've got a box here for your area of potential permanent grass area to be treated as habitat. Okay, so if you do wish to put this area into the application to be treated as habitat, you'll need to answer this question here. Do you want to include the eligible permanent grass area and treat it as habitat? You will need to tick yes to that. For those field parcels that you do wish to include the eligible permanent grass area, you will need to go into these field parcels on an individual basis. You don't have to go into every single field parcel, only select those ones where you wish to, include the permanent grass area but to be treated as habitat. I'll just show you now. The next slide then. Once I have ticked yes here to this question, this criteria here for the potential permanent grassland, which was on one of the slides on the previous presentation. It's just to confirm that the land is permanent grassland. The land has not been ploughed, reseeded, including sward, rejuvenated through direct drilling or surface seeding in the last 10 years, etc. Now, what we've asked you to do there is to confirm then that permanent grassland on the parcel meets all the criteria listed above. So you'll need to tick this one here, and you'll need to confirm the criteria, meeting the criteria here by ticking this box here. I've just highlighted that in red so that it's a bit more visible in the presentation. So once you've done that, just wanted to point out then, if you said yes to this question here, to include the eligible permanent grass area to be treated as habitat, you must tick this. If you don't, it will come up with an error message here asking you to tick it. Once you've ticked these two boxes here, it should be then confirming and be included in this column here, permanent grass area included. It will have a yes here. So you don't need to go into individual field parcels to tick no. You just need to go into the individual field parcels if you want it to be part of your application. Okay. Right. We have another button here for modifying. When we say modifying, it's just where we go in and make a change on the field parcel, but just some of the information that's available on the field parcels, should I say. So this section then, I just want to go through deselecting a parcel. So you click modify against the field parcel that you want to go in and make a change or deselect. And then if I show you here, then you've got your field parcel details. For this particular example, I just want to show that, okay, this tick box is available to tick if you don't have management control of the parcel, or the parcel does not meet the eligibility criteria for the scheme. Okay. So once you've ticked that, it will ask you for a change reason. This question here will come up, reason for deleting and selecting this field parcel. It is mandatory, and then you'll have a drop-down box that will give you some reasons for why you wish to deselect this field parcel. Okay. Once you have done that, apologies, I think I've skipped. Once you've done that, it will take you back to your parcels list, and you can see here now that the parcel eligible green tick has actually disappeared because we have unselected that parcel. Even though it will show up on your application summary, it won't actually be part of your contract offer. Okay. If you wish to add parcels that are not already pre-populated on the application, you go in and click this icon, add parcel. And it will come up with a pop-up box here asking you to add the field parcel. You pop your sheet reference and field number in here, and then it will come up if it's been registered with RPW and it's a correct field parcel number. It's not already existing on your application, then it will come up with the information here, and it will ask you for a reason for adding this field parcel. Okay. Also, if you do enter field parcels that isn't registered or is not considered eligible, then it will come up with a field parcel not registered or is not eligible message up here. Also, again, if the parcel already exists on your application, it's already been pre-populated, you've tried to enter it again, it will tell you that it already exists on your selected parcels list. After selecting all of your parcels, selecting the permanent grassland area that you wish to treat as habitat, you then come to the parcel summary. This is basically a table that includes your total habitat area that's included in the application. And then it will give you the total permanent grass area that you've included, where you've gone and selected the tick boxes. It will also give you the total number of eligible parcels on your application, and it will give you the number of parcels with permanent grass area included also. Okay. If I go to the next slide. So we're on our way to submitting the application form now. So we'll have the submission pages now, and this is our usual pages for submission of any of our applications through RPW Online. And we've got the errors, information and summary. So this gives you a full summary of what you've ticked on your application form. I'll just go to the next one. And it will give you a full list of your parcels and whether or not you've said yes to permanent grass area to be included in your application. We've got some here that haven't, and we've got a parcel here that's not eligible. So although it's listed here, it won't go through to be considered. But we will check all of those anyway. We will be checking those on the RPW side. If I go to the next screen, and it will also give you another little summary here of the parcel summary page, and it will also generate then any error messages that if you haven't answered questions, etc. It will ask you to complete those before you can actually submit the application. We go through then the usual declarations and undertakings, where we've got the I agree to the above declarations and undertakings tick box down there. And then once you've done that, it should come up with this submit page, and you click on the submit button and your application should be submitted. Okay. That's the end of the presentation for Habitat Wales scheme application. Bear with me one moment for the just need to find the presentation for, apologies, for the Habitat Wales the Habitat Wales Commons. Showing. Okay, so the Habitat Wales Scheme Commons expression of interest. This is really a very simple form. So I will just go ahead and go through the screen, the slides then that have been put together. I can't see that. There we go. Sorry, it was a bit slow going through. So the Habitat Wales Commons scheme expression of interest is available under either forms or your homepage. It is only available to the grazing associations. So the application will only show up on their customer reference numbers, or accounts then, I should say. Apologies, this is slow. Here we go. So we go to the usual start application. I will just skip through this because it's on every application. And there's our introduction page giving you some information about the scheme. And again, your Habitat Wales rules and guidance document. And then your how to complete instructions then on how to complete this application. We have a privacy notice page next, which is our usual. And then we come to the eligibility page of the application, and on here you will have it will be pre-populated. I've had to blank it out because it's yeah, I don't want to be showing real contract references. So Glassdoor Commons contract reference here, and then it will give you some information in these blue boxes. And in the top blue box, it will say, in order to be eligible for the Habitat Wales Commons scheme, you must adhere to the contract requirements previously agreed in the above Glassdoor Commons 2023 contract. This will include Glassdoor Commons management option, stocking levels, advanced management options, excluding option 402, additional management payment for control burning, and then finally stocking diary requirements. Now in the second blue box, this information here will tell you that payments for the Habitat Wales Commons scheme will be paid to the Grazing Association only. If your previous Glassdoor Commons contract was paid to individual members of the Grazing Association, you will need to ensure that a Grazing Association bank account is set up. Now, this isn't straight away, but we are asking here, I confirm that a Grazing Association bank account is or will be set up. This is a mandatory question which you need to populate here. Then the second question, eligibility question is, I wish to proceed with the Habitat Wales Commons scheme application based on the requirements of my Glassdoor Commons 2023 contract. I will go then on to the next slide, and as can be seen by this screenshot here, because I haven't ticked this one, it's coming up with an error message saying that this is a mandatory question and I need to answer it. Okay, so move on. Now, we come to the field parcel section, and on this particular application, this has only got common land on it. Some of the applications, if you've under your Glassdoor Commons 2023 contract, if you had both common land and land used in common, they will both come up here. It will all be pre-populated. Whatever you've got on your 2023 Commons contract, it will be pre-populated here. So if you've only got one, like this particular one, or if you've got, 5 or 6 entries, 2 of them could be land used in common, they will all come up here. So really all you need to do is double check the details from here, which is what we hold already on your Glassdoor Commons 2023 contract. You don't need to do anything more than that. So I will go on to the next slide. I just wanted to mention then, okay, I've got a slide here that will show you, that shows you then this line here, the first entry shows that this is land used in common because there's no registered county name and there's no common land number here. If it's got county name and common land number, it's common land. If it hasn't, it's land used in common. Finally, apologies. Here then we then go on to the submission pages where you get your application summary and any error messages that come up. So, all you've got here is the 2 answers that you've given to the eligibility questions. and then just confirming that these entries here are as per your Glacier Common 2023 contract. So if I go to declarations and undertakings, then again tick in the little box down here to say that you agree. And then you go to submit your application. This. And then finally, you'll have this submissions confirmation page. And
Okay, diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you very much, Joanne and Jane, for your presentations and for going through the application process. There's over 80 questions that have come in, so I'm not sure if we will be able to go through them all. Can I ask the ones, if you finish presenting, can you put yourselves on mute, please? Lovely, thank you. Yes, there's a number of questions to go through, but Richard has promised there will be a Q&A, frequently asked questions that we'll prepare as well, and that will be on the Farming Connect website following, well, hopefully within the next week anyway. So, Siwan's been working here, grouping the questions. So we'll start off with the dates. Mae dechreuwn ni gyda'r dyddiadau. Please, can you confirm, does this scheme cover up to the 1st of January 2025 or the 1st of April 2025?
The scheme is a 12-month scheme up to 1st of January 2025. So it's a 12-month scheme up to 1st of January.
So
Yes.
does that mean that the SFS will then start in January 2025?
The SFS will be subject to a consultation, final consultation at the end of this year, which will consider or clarify that transition period and a start date. What we are aiming to do, a key thing for us, is to maintain the land up to that period. So we're working on a 12-month contract with SFS to follow that in whatever form it is developed.
Okay, thank you. When does the application window close, and then when will we know if applications have been successful?
It's a 6 weeks application window, so that takes us to 10th of sorry, my maths is not good enough, but anyway, 6 weeks application window.
10th of November, Richard, 10th of November.
Oh, thank you. And the contract, it'll after that date, subject to the verification of the agreements, the first contracts will be issued early in December.
Okay, diolch, Richard. The SFS scheme then, by entering new parcels of land into this scheme as habitat land, would that potentially affect new schemes in the future?
If the land is identified as habitat land through our maps, the likelihood that those will be eligible for the SFS as habitat land, you'd expect that. I think the question really is on a third category where farmers introduce land to be managed as habitat, what happens to those? I think for this scheme, we are looking at this, it's a 12-month scheme. For some farmers with outside Glasgow at the moment, with no land into management, by bringing some of this land into management, it'll start that process. But there is no, the SFS, how that will identify habitat land according to its own criteria, or semi-natural land and so on. So by bringing that land into the third category, does not necessarily say that will be locked up or not locked up, or will roll over into SFS compulsory. You know, that the two schemes are separate. We are providing that bridge into SFS, but this is not a way of trying to get land and locking that land into organic, into habitat management, and unable to move back from that one. But if it is habitat land, I can't see any areas where that habitat will fall out of not being habitat land if it's identified under an existing map or a layer.
But just to clarify then, once an area is made into habitat land, would it be possible to revert it back to non-habitable land after December 2024?
Again, if it's identified as a layer, as habitat under a layer or a publicly published habitat layer, those are habitat land. So there won't be any option not to include those as habitat or to intensify that area. But if it's introduced under the third category of land managed as habitat, that won't automatically roll over into SFS. That is starting the process for some farms, not all farms. It depends on what the eligibility criteria for habitat land under SFS will be when that scheme is introduced.
Okay, we've got a few questions then relating to Glastir. So Glastir has been previously rolled over. So why have you decided not to roll it over for another year until the SFS starts?
Because the final Glastir contracts are funded by the remainder of the EU funds. As those EU funds come to an end, or the last final year of those, this scheme is funded through domestic funds. So therefore, we have to make this budget or this offer available to all farmers. So we couldn't roll over existing contracts based on a selection that was done many years ago. So to be fair to all farmers, this is available to all, and not, if you're excluded or have not been successful in a Glastir application in the past, this doesn't exclude you. So that was the reason why Glastir cannot be rolled over again, because it's domestic funds and we have to make it available to all farmers.
Okay, thank you. If you are in Glastir Advance, can you continue for Glastir Small grants? Can you continue to apply for Glastir Small grants?
Well, the equivalent to Glastir Small grants is a Small Grants Environment Scheme. So if as the Glastir contract comes to an end in December, you're eligible then to apply for that scheme, for the capital works, hedgerow maintenance and creation and so forth. So yes.
Okay, another question on Glastir. For land currently managed under Glastir, will it be possible to change this management? For example, could land managed under Glastir as unimproved hay meadow be managed as permanent grassland under the Habitat Management Scheme?
Yes, the details of that will be in the management requirement. So that if it's likely that will fall into the managed as permanent grassland category with no inputs. So there'll be option under that habitat classification to either follow the grazing route, if you like, or the cutting hay route. So there's two choices within. So within that habitat classification, there are two options of how to manage it, and the farm will have the choice in that. So he doesn't have to carry on that choice from the previous Glastir contract.
Another clarification question here. The habitat land has to be entered in its entirety to be eligible, but the permanent pasture managed as habitat can be selected and included or excluded as chosen by the farmer. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes. So yes, habitat land. Yeah, simple. Yes. Yes. This answer.
Good, straight answer. We like those. We have land in Glastir Organic. What is the situation with organic land already in Glastir Organic?
Now, with organic land is eligible to apply, and this scheme for certain organic farmers, they'll be in a good position to apply for it because of the low use of fertilizer. However, this is not a direct replacement for Glastir Organic in that there is no maintenance payment just for being organic. So it is not a like-for-like scheme for organic, and we're not saying it is that one. This is a habitat scheme. Just on the organic side of things, there remains another 3 months of the organic Glastir Organic contract to run until the end of December. The Minister has been in discussions or has had recent conversation with the Welsh Organic Forum on the matter. So I think on the organic side, I think it's to wait what the outcome of those discussions are.
Okay, thank you. Is there an option for current Glastir parkland habitat?
The parkland habitat is an eligible, will be pulled through as a habitat land into the scheme, yes.
Okay. Next question in Welsh. Roedd gwrychoedd dan gytundeb Glastir. Ydyn nhw mewn felly? Question on hedgerows.
Na, nid yw grychoedd yn cynnig trwyddo, dim ond y tir cynefin yn hwn. So the hedgerows, the management options for hedgerows in Glastir is not pulled through as eligible habitat land for this scheme.
Another clarification question as well. In Glastir, advanced payments for corn were made. Will these be lost in the scheme? And is rotational arable land included in anything?
No, so the arable options is not pulled through as habitat, and those options that were rotated will not be pulled through. So no, the no input arable options within Glastir is not pulled through to the habitat scheme as habitat land.
Does the scheme restrict the number of animals on the land, and do you need to keep stocking diaries?
In certain options, you will need to keep diaries and for the land. The stocking requirements it's more to do with we'd give recommendations for stocking densities, but it's not a requirement. The requirement is to manage the land or the pasture in a certain way, using, adding or removing livestock management practices. But we're not mandating for the majority of the habitat land, the stocking rates. But there are certain exceptions for certain wetlands in some of the options, but in general, we are not stating stocking rates for the vast majority of them, not in fact.
Thank you, Richard. There's a group of questions now on common land. So are commons within a constituted graziers association, but not in Glastir, eligible, e.g. commons which have been in sustainable management scheme?
Unless the common has an existing Glastir commons, it's not eligible for the scheme. The reason for that is we can only pay for management of that common, especially where there's designated sites on a common, with a management plan and agreed consent. So for that reason, unless a common has an existing Glastir agreement, they won't be eligible. However, I just would highlight the potential for commons. We are aware that there are, for commons to be brought into management, there's quite a bit of work that needs to be to get a commons association in place, to develop the management plan, get the consent in addition, and so forth. So that's something else that's being looked at the moment to support those commons that are not currently under contract and that will not be eligible for this scheme. Look at what support we can provide to those to get them ready for any future support.
And how do you calculate, on the commons element, how is the hectareage calculated?
It is calculated from what's currently within a Glastir Commons contract. So the area will be the same as what's in an existing contract.
And will there be a payment for managing commons with cattle, even though current commons Glastir Advanced doesn't include this?
There will be no new payments on commons. The only management options are the existing management options that are provided through the existing Glastir Commons contract. So there'll be no additional payments to have cattle grazing on commons.
Thank you, Richard, for answering all these questions. We're whizzing through them quite fast, to be honest. So on the payments then, is the payment rate per hectare for the whole year?
Yes, it's one payment rate for the 12-month period.
And is there an additional payment for stocking management on commons in addition to the £25 per hectare quoted?
Yes. Yes, so those will be similar, not the same as existing Glastir Commons contracts. So the requirements for those additional management that's based on a management plan for those commons will be retained.
And how can we, when will you know when you'll have confirmation about the funding?
Yeah, well, that is the big question. Until the review of budget is completed across the Welsh Government, which is currently being undertaken, we don't know what the budget will be. But we will need that budget, or need confirmation of the budget, before we can issue contracts. And we'll need to issue contracts in early December. So my advice to farmers who are looking at this is, now, even if we had the budget, it's a competitive scheme. Some farmers that score highly in terms of the environmental benefits of the scheme will be selected first, and others might not be selected if they're lower down in terms of the scores. So at this moment, no farmer can be guaranteed that they'll be offered a contract. We are hoping, our aim is that there's sufficient budget to support all farmers, but we don't know that at the moment. So the message that I would strongly say is, you need to apply, you need to consider, look at the scheme, consider the management requirements that will be published towards the end of the week against the habitat. If you can meet those management requirements, or think that you can do it without, accepting the change that will be required, or if you're in a Glassdoor contract, you accept that you're going to carry on with those management of those field parcels, then submit your application. If you don't submit an application, that's one guaranteed way of not being successful. But if you submit the application, when budget comes available later in the year, you'll be issued and offered a contract if you're selected. So I accept that uncertainty without knowing what the budget is, but unless you apply, you're not in it to be able to be successful.
And is it fair to say that the payments are much lower than the current Glassdoor rates?
When you compare there was a range of payment rates within Glassdoor. Some of the options, such as the serial options, are quite high payment. Those are not pulled through. Some of the options in Glassdoor, for instance, the grazing open country, our payment rate is higher than that one. So it's trying to strike a balance using a simplified one payment rate across all the habitat options. And it's also to give the opportunity to be as fair a payment that we can get based on what we think the management requirements and the changes that a farm has to do to meet those requirements. So I'm hoping that for most farms, or for many farms applying, there will be some changes required. They have to manage that land in a certain way, but it won't impact a huge amount on the stocking rates, just the change in the management practices. So I'm hoping that the payment rate is a fair reflection, or as fair as we can make it for farmers entering the scheme.
I think it's fair to say, looking at the questions coming in, there is a concern really about the payments and how the scheme has changed. And from Farming Connect's point of view, I'd like to say that, anybody wants to discuss further their own situation on their own farm, they're more than welcome to contact your development officer, and Farming Connect will do everything that's possible to look into your situation. I'm just thinking, for example, we've got the advisory service. There's up to £3,000 available per business if you wanted advice from an advisor to look at your business plan, or technical advice as well. But we'll move on now then to the application process in itself. So once an expression of interest is lodged, is it possible to withdraw that EOI or refuse the contract offered?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Thank you. Will the scoring system be published? Which areas are targeted first in the scoring process?
The scoring process mechanism will be published in the guidance, so it's there for everybody to see. If I reflect back on my initial slide in a presentation, terms of our aims and priorities. We wanted to maintain land under current management, so that land will score highly. We want to support habitat land, so that will score quite high. And we want to maintain support for common land. So those will support highly, but it will also be an area-based. So we'll select, there will be scores depending on where the habitat sits in terms of certain areas. These will be published as well. So it's all be published prior to the window opening. But again, my advice to farmers is, yeah, you can look at it, you can spend time reviewing the selection and criteria and scoring, but it'll be published, we'll follow that, submit an application based on the land that you think is appropriate and eligible for the scheme. And the scoring will sort itself out then as the applications come in, we will select them. If we have budget, regardless of where you are, you'll be supported. And like I say, we'll select according up to the budget that we have. So that, I think that is what my advice is. The scoring is what it is really, and as published.
Thank you. Which layers on Data Map Wales will be used to identify habitats, and how can I view it?
Right. The areas will be the areas that we use will be published in the guidance. We're also, as a scheme has opened, we will include a link to Data Map Wales with a home page or a landing page for the scheme, where all with the layers we're using will be pre-populated on that page of Data Map Wales, so you don't have to go and search for those layers. So if a farmer wants to interrogate the layers in more detail down to the field parcel, they can go on to the Data Map Wales. So we'll provide that link and that information in the guidance.
Thank you. And if you don't express an interest in this scheme, are you still eligible for the SFS scheme?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the SSSI. There's a couple of questions that have come in on the SSSI. Will geological designated SSSI not be eligible? Those claiming and not claiming Glastir.
Well, if it's within an existing Glastir contract, those areas will be pre-identified and will be pulled through into the new contract, into your application form for a contract. If those are currently outside the Glastir contract, regardless of what management is undertaken on those areas, they will not be eligible for this 12-month period.
Right, thank you. So will there be management payments for open grazing, unfenced areas which are not common land?
If individual farmers have areas of open grazing, yes, there will be payments for those. Yes, because if they're in a habitat area, they will be pulled through and identified as habitat for that farmer. If they're not identified, the farmer can still apply as under the third category to manage that area as habitat. So the open, one of the habitat classifications is management of open country.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to root crops. I've joined Growing for the Environment scheme this year and sprayed off good habitat land to grow swedes and arable crops. Are those fields now eligible or not eligible?
Well, if they're not eligible unless they're in a particular habitat layer that's been identified. Now, if they've been identified as a habitat layer, whether they've been ploughed is another question then. But if they were previously permanent grassland and have been ploughed, they would not be eligible to be included in the scheme under the third category. So for that land, it depends if it's an identified habitat or not.
Is there any option for root crops, etc., as we have under Glastir?
Not under the habitat scheme. For the root crop option, it would be through the Growing for the Environment scheme.
Thank you. Woodland next then. Does woodland option 7 need to be stock excluded?
No, there's again the management recommendations for that option will be presented to you so in the guidance before you submit the application. The stock exclusion, it's maintain the management of that, so it could include grazing or that woodland.
Okay. And if we have land that is in the woodland creation scheme, will it be eligible?
No. If it's been paid a payment under the woodland creation scheme, it would not be eligible.
Okay, I have a streamside corridor under the GT Advance, Gloucester Advance. I wish to extend this into fields with new fencing, additional tree and shrub planting, and siting of a couple of glamping in this. As I understand, I would have to deselect that area from any application. Is that correct?
Well, if there's a glamping part on that area of the field would need to be deselected, will not be eligible for the habitat scheme. So it depends on how those, that's quite a detailed question and depends on the circumstances of the application. So if it's a Gloucester Advance, the streamside corridors would be a habitat option that's pulled through. It depends what the option that's on that field and what the changes on this. So that one is a very specific case. What will probably the applicant will need to submit a query on that one or submit the application based on what's presented to them on the application form.
Okay, thank you. What are the requirements of managing the land? If application is approved and payments are made, what does the farmer need to do to the land? I.e. nothing, leave it as it is, light grazing, etc.
A combination of those really. So the management requirements will be in the guidance. So as a farmer looks on their online application as a form is presented to them, he'll be able to identify what habitat land is eligible that he's got and under what option it falls into. So we'll be able to look at what the requirements are for that land. So yes, it will be no inputs in terms of no fertilizer and no herbicides. It will be managed, that land, through grazing to have a varied stocking, dense sward height and so on. So there will be some management requirements. So whoever's applying, there's a judgment call then whether those are achievable and whether he willing to do those and whether for the management payment we're offering. But these will be published before the end of the week as a window open. These will be published. So review those prior to the submitting an application.
And will there be inspections?
There will be, same as last year, there will be inspections. Yes. And
will category 3 land be subject to EIA regs in the future?
Well, ploughing any permanent grassland over 10 years might fall into those regs, so that won't. So, you know, it'll depend on what is in that sward at the time. So it is same that those regs would still apply as to all permanent grassland.
So you mentioned little fertilizer. How much is little fertilizer or farmyard manure? And can you apply lime?
Right. The little applies to whether the permanent grassland is eligible to be included in terms of it hasn't been proved, it has received little or no artificial fertilizer. We're not stating a level. We're not saying this is a judgment call for the farmer. Because if that land has received a lot of fertilizer, the requirements for the scheme is no fertilizer. So it would be a massive management change for a farm to move from a lot of fertilizer to no fertilizer. And the likelihood, if the field has received a lot of fertilizer, it'll be predominantly ryegrass, and there won't be any lot of native species or anything, so it wouldn't be a field to be included in the scheme. However, you could have fields that receive a light dressing of farmyard manure, or possibly a small dressing of fertilizer that's cut for a hay crop, quite extensively farmed, even though it's getting some manure, and still have a mixed sward and what that could be developed as a habitat land. So again, it's not, I would look at those requirements, not at just one, the fertilizer in isolation. It's a combination of those to make the judgment. I'm not sure what the second part of this question was.
Can I apply lime?
For certain options, you can apply a lime, yes.
Thank you. I'm conscious of time, Richard, and I think we've got 7 questions left. Are you willing to answer the 7?
Yes, might as well.
Thank you. So does purple moor grass, rush pasture and upland heath classify as habitat?
Again, if they're under a Glassdoor contract and pull through, yes, they would. Now, some of those areas would also, if they're not in a Glassdoor contract, would be identified as habitat land, because they're almost certainly classed under those layers as habitat. So I would be surprised if they're not. Yes.
Is the scheme in addition to basic payment scheme or instead of it?
In addition for 2024-25.
Good, thank you. What are designated sites?
So these would be triple SIs, for instance, so areas where have been identified of high nature value, which there's a requirement for farmers to maintain those under law as they are now. So there is a certain requirement for farmers not to damage those sites. So if we were supporting those under any additional management, it would require NRW to have agree to a management plan, such as stocking rates, close period, and so on, and consent that land, so approve to that management plan. So those are what the designated sites are. And again, on Data Map Wales, if you went on that site and searched for designated sites or triple SIs, it would actually show up a map for you where you could zoom down to your individual farm and to parcel level and identify whether any of those areas on your farm.
Are public bodies, county councils, eligible to apply if they are directly engaged in farming a holding?
If they meet the eligibility criteria, yes, they are.
Okay, thank you. Do grazing agreements apply full management for the landowner?
It depends on the agreements. So the applicant requires 12-month management control. Now, if you only have a grazing agreement for 10 months or 11 months, you do not have that 12-month management control. So it depends on the individual circumstances of that field or parcel or farm on who has the management control. So that is what it boils down to, really. So it depends on the agreement. So if somebody has a 11-month grazing agreement, as it stands, they will not be, that field parcel will not be eligible. However, if they came to an agreement with the landlord to maintain that management control for the following month and submit the manage my land change to confirm that, they would become eligible.
How do I apply for additional land if it's not showing on my map?
If Jane's coming in, do you want to come into this one, Jane?
There's an add parcel button. So if the land has not been pre-populated, you can click on the add parcel button and add each of the parcels that you consider are eligible. And then once they come in, we'll check to make sure that they are before proceeding.
Thank you. And if farmers miss this window, can they submit an EOI on their BPS 2024 form?
No. The application window is 6 weeks, and we'll close on 10th of November.
And I think that was the final question, Richard. You'll be pleased to hear. And I'm really grateful I've bombarded you with questions, but I'm really grateful for all those answers. I'm conscious of the fact that perhaps there are few questions we've missed out, but we will provide answers in the form of a Q&A and frequently asked questions, and these will be uploaded onto the Farming Connect website as soon as we can after tonight. Felly, ie, gai jyst ddiolch yn fawr iawn i'r siaradwyr heno, i Richard Evans yn gyntaf, a hefyd i Jane a Joanne am gyflwyno yr cynllun newydd. Dwi'n ymwybodol bod nifer fawr o gwestiynau a nifer a tipyn o ansicrwydd ynglyn â pob peth, ond fel o'n i'n sôn ar y dechrau, mae cyswllt ffermio yma i helpu. So os bod gyda chi unrhyw gwestiwn pellach, cofiwch ddod mewn cysylltiad gyda ni. Gai ddiolch hefyd i Hefin am gyfieithu a diolch i Helen am sicrhau bod yr ochr technegol yn gweithio'n iawn ac i Siwan Howardson am fynd trwy'r cwestiynau yna, dosbarthu nhw a grwpio nhw mor gryno. Felly gyda hynna, gai jyst ymuno yn dda a diolch i chi gyd am ymuno gyda ni heno. Ni'n gwerthfawrogi'ch amser chi'n fawr iawn. Noswaith dda iawn i chi gyd.